What I'd like to do now is go into detail on each of the 5 alternatives. First alternative we'll talk about is our alternative WA1, which is a freeway alternative. This alternative can be categorized as one that favors mobility over access, as compared to the other alternatives which we'll be looking at. With this alternative, we generally follow the corridor preservation alignment that has been previously acquired. It ties in to US 40 at 800 North, and then continues on from 800 North up to SR 32, and where we do make several improvements. This is a grade separated alternative. We have grade separations at 13 South, which includes, in this case, an interchange. We also have an interchange grade separation at SR 113. Looking at the south end, vehicles can also access the bypass between US 40 and US 189 at the interchange shown with 113. Vehicles on the bypass would not have to stop at SR 113 or at 1300 South. This bypass would also be what we call an access category 1, which means that there would be no other access allowed in the future except at the interchanges. Also note with this option that there is a future interchange planned at US 40 and at SR 32 as a separate project. This will happen regardless of the outcome of the EIS. All action alternatives assume that the intersection will be placed by 2050. I'll also point out that there are 3 future traffic signals on North US 40 between SR 32 and 500 North. These intersections will be signalized when warranted by traffic, regardless of the outcome of this EIS. All action alternatives assume that these 3 traffic signals will be placed by 2050. The locations of these signals are at North College Way, Wasatch Commons, and Coyote Lane. With alternative WA1, North 40 would be an access category 3, which allows access only at signalized intersections. A frontage road system would be added to both sides of US 40 between SR 32 and 800 North, where the bypass connects. Vehicles could only get on and off of US 40 at the 3 signalized intersections. All other side streets and driveways would connect to the frontage road. The speed limit on the North 40 segment would be 45 miles per hour. Looking at the second table, which compares alternative WA1 to existing conditions and the 2050 no action alternatives, you'll notice that all the intersections under local mobility would operate at acceptable levels of service, similar to the conditions today, but better than the no action, which would have 3 failing intersections. I will note that there is one segment on Main Street that would operate at a level of service F. You'll also notice that the southbound queuing, which we measure at 500 North, would extend about 1,600 feet, which is about 1/3 of a mile, back from the intersection during the peak hour. This is the 95th percentile queue length, which means that the traffic model predicts what the queues will be. The queue will only get this long 5% of the time. So at least 95% of the time, this queue will be shorter. The predicted queue length is longer than it is today, but much shorter than it would be if we didn't do anything. If we don't do anything, the queues would be 13,100 feet in 2050, about 2.5 miles. At 2.5 miles, the queues would back up to about North College Way. The travel times on Main Street from SR 32 to US 189, which is the hub intersection, would be just over 10 minutes compared to the 8 minutes and 20 seconds that is there today. If we did nothing, the travel time would be 16 minutes and 40 seconds. It is important to note that the congestion would continue to get worse as growth occurs. All the alternatives we are evaluating in detail would have longer travel times on Main Street in 2050 compared to today. However, they would all be improvements as compared to doing nothing. Looking at the regional travel time, which describes the conditions on the bypass. The travel time for the bypass is measured from SR 32 to US 189, which is at about Edwards Lane. Edwards Lane was selected as an endpoint so that all the alternatives could be compared equally. The travel time on the bypass from SR 32 to US 189 would be just over 9 minutes and 10 seconds. Without a bypass, vehicles would continue to use Main Street. The travel time today is 10 minutes and 40 seconds. In 2050, it is predicted that to be just over 19 minutes. Travel times on the bypass with Alternative WA1 would be a savings of about 10 minutes as compared to doing nothing. Looking at the impacts on this table, preliminary impacts with WA1, there's approximately 8.84 acres of impacts to waters of the US. So that's our wetlands, streams, ditches, and canals, which would be filled in. We also have 8 potential historic buildings that could be demolished. And there would also be, with this alternative, there would be, we estimate 18 residents and businesses which would need to be relocated. This alternative would cost approximately $234 million in today's dollars. Note that these impacts and costs are at a very high level and would likely change as we evaluate the alternatives in more detail.